Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's been a hot minute since I've been on here and I'm really sorry, but my life is like going crazy right now and I wanted to get out this video. It is using the cinnamon to make a rust effect. When I went and started this video, I had 3 of these cherub molds that were in my stash yet. I had never listed them on my website. I didn't realize that until I went to use one because they were just not moving. So I thought, okay, let's do something with them. And so I did, but it took me forever to get this video out and I sold them all. Go figure. All I needed to do was list them. Anyway, I have this rust effect, this cherub mold, if you have it. It's an old retired one. So if you don't have it, I can't get it for you anymore. But it is a double one. I made this rust effect and I'm going to show you how in this video. So please follow along and I'll see you at the end. Let's start out this project by making some molds. I am using the IOD primitive mold and the IOD clay. I dust my mold with a little bit of cornstarch before I put the clay into it to make it come out just a little bit easier. There is a micro rim that you can just pull your clay out of the mold and then just let a little bit of gravity pull it out of the mold for you. I am putting this on a can lid, which is just a simple household item that I'm sure many of you have. This one's a little bit smaller, a little bit more dainty. You really have to make the mold push out of the clay, push out of the mold. So you're gonna pull it back and then just kind of let gravity take its course and get that fine little thing out of there. So I'm going ahead and I made 2 of those with a little flower. That is my design. I took that can lid and I smashed it down. You can see it on the right hand side there. There's one not smashed and one smashed. The next mold I'm using is the cherubs mold. I do not have any more of these molds, but if you have one or any other mold, you can use this resin recipe. It's just equal parts of the resin and you stir it up for about 30 seconds. And I wait until it gets a little bit warm to the touch. And after it's stirred up, then you can go ahead and pour it into your IOD mold and it sets up in 10 minutes. It's really kind of a fun process to do. I really enjoy using resin, but if you are sensitive to anything, you might want to wear gloves. So I pour that right in. This is a really, really big mold, so I had to make sure that I had enough resin made up ahead. And then I actually got 2 of these smaller little cherubs out of this same pour. And those go back to back, so you can make a full ornament with those little cherub angels, and I'll show you how we do that. Now we're gonna let it dry. And at this process, I sped it up and did a time lapse, and that is how it looks when it dries. And you would think that the thinner parts would dry first. That's not the case. The thicker parts dry first. I went ahead and pulled out these cherubs. They're still a little bit bendable, which is really kind of fun. And if they do happen to get a little bit hard on you, you can heat them up with a heat gun, but just remember that the more you heat them up, the harder they're gonna get. So soon you won't be able to do that. So they do go back to back. You can make a full ornament. You can either glue them or I'm going to show you the process that I did. So here's that big one. And she is beautiful. So I'm mixing up the second batch. The big one is not back to back, so you can't make that one a 3D ornament. That one is just a flat backed ornament. However, I did make 2 of them because I mixed up a nice big batch of this clay. So I put that one in and I'm gonna let it set up for a little bit on all of these. I'm putting that resin in there, especially on this big one, getting everything that I can and letting that set up. Then I wanted to put a hanger on and it got stuck in that top one. Made me mad, but I tried to push that back into place as well as I could because it was already starting to dry. The heck with it. I didn't use a hanger. I just put the done ones on top of it. So they're molding into each other. so you don't have to glue them at all, because that mold was a little bit still on the wet side. So I went ahead and just stuck the string in this one, in between the two layers. I tried this one, it was already too far gone, so we'll have to figure out a different method for that one. So anyway, you can go ahead and adhere these back to back, and you will not get them apart. It's better than glue. So if you have the time, go ahead and do that. That one that I messed up, we're gonna figure out what to do with him. After these cure, you can pull them right back out of the mold, and they are like, the string is adhered right in there. It's perfect. I love this little mold. So unfortunately, I put them on my website and I sold out. So hopefully you have one. If not, you can use many other types of molds to do this same process with. And this one that I messed up on, it comes out, and I just take my fingers and I pull off the excess. As long as it's still not fully cured, you can do that. I tried to snip off some of that bulge on the back of there, but it didn't work. And like I said, these do not go back to back. They don't match up completely. I'm sure nobody would notice except for me. So what I did is I took this one that's still a little bit pliable, and I put wood glue on the back of it, and I'm gonna put it around this pail. And I stuck it on there and pushed the cherub around the pail. You need 6 hands to do this process. So I went ahead and took some painter's tape, and I taped the cherub to the pail so that it would dry in this position. So we went ahead and taped him down and got it all secured to the pail so that we wouldn't have any gaps when it was fully cured. So you can use painter's tape to do that process, and then just let it sit there and it'll dry. It'll dry in that shape and be right adhered to that pail, which this one's gonna be a fun project. I was gonna sell this pail as is, but now it's going to be an even better pail. So we're gonna go back to the clay. It's now a little bit cured up, and it's not fully cured, but it's mostly dry on to the touch. And I went ahead and put some wood glue on the back side, making sure that all of the edges were covered, and put those little sprigs down along with that bird and that flower. And this is going to be a rusty, crusty Christmas ornament. It is going to look pretty cool. I can't wait to see this one when it's finished. Now for my soup cans, I am taking textured wallpaper, which I do sell on my website, a textured wallpaper. There's a couple different designs that I still have some of. Some of them I am sold out of, but this textured wallpaper works for many various projects. So you can find that at thepaintedphotographer.com. So I went ahead and I cut it the same size as the soup can. And now I'm going to take some wood glue and I'm going to glue this wallpaper onto my can. It is not coming off. I've done this for a couple different projects, and that paper does not come off. I thought it was too thick for the decoupage medium, so wood glue worked like a champ. So I went ahead and I made sure that it was all glued on there nice with all those ridges on the soup can that you normally have. And now it doesn't even look like a soup can anymore. I'm pushing some bubbles out of there also to make sure that it is adhered to the can. So now I went ahead with the Hello Pumpkin. This was a new IOD release this year. This one sold out really, really fast. And but those of you that do have this mold, I'm sure you are enjoying it, but here's another use for it to make it nice and rusty crusty and make it really look like fall. So I went ahead and put the IOD clay into the mold and pulled out the excess using the microfiber rim, making sure that the back is nice and flat. That's one thing that you want to do, is make sure that that back is nice and flat and doesn't have any bubbles in it. Using that wood glue, I adhered it to this box with a couple of different leaves, and now I am going to let it dry. Here we're going back to the process of what we do for the rust patina look. I am taking the weathered wood DIY paint and some Saltwash and mixing it together so I have a nice thick brownie type batter paint. And then when you stipple with your brush, especially on the edge of that mold, then it'll look like that mold was in that on that box for a long time. It's not going to have any gaps or anything like that. And it's also going to give you some nice texture to the end project. So for the pumpkin, I don't want to lose the details. So I go right into the jar of weathered wood paint. So it's not that thick mixture. It is just the paint on top of the mold, making sure that you can still see all those details. So this is just the weathered wood. Again, on the cherub mold, it's the Saltwash mixture. And I'm just making sure that it's not losing some of that detail. But I did want a little bit of texture on this big cherub mold because she is gorgeous. She is going to look really, really good, all rusted up. And you can see in both wings, my husband did drill a hole in each side of those wings, which will be perfect for a hanger. This is also the primitive mold that is made with the IOD clay on the can lid, and we're doing the same thing, giving it lots of nice texture and making it look like it's been there forever. So there it is, all finished. The cans, same thing. Saltwash mixture, gotta have a little bit of texture along with that texture of the wallpaper. And I just don't want it to be smooth. I want it to have some crustiness to it and some depth. And that Saltwash is the perfect solution to adding depth to your project. If you need any Saltwash or haven't used Saltwash before, you can find it at thepaintedphotographer.com. Here is that cherub angel that we put on that can. For one of the cans, I wanted to use the Roycycled fall project paper. This is also on my website. So I tried to find one that would fit the size of my can. And there's a couple of them that would work. So it's the same width as the can. I didn't want to lose too much detail. So I went ahead and cut out this bird along with a little bit of the label behind it, which is going to make a nice back for my can. I didn't want to cut off that flower, so I'm going ahead and using the paper that I had cut for a different one just to make sure that I was cutting the exact spot that I needed instead of cutting too much. I didn't want to lose this paper because it is such a good paper that I can use every inch of that paper. Every inch is filled with something that you're going to want to use in a mixed media project, in a project like this, in many different projects. So make sure that you're not wasting any of this, and whatever you do have, just fold it back up and save it for another day. Here I'm taking that tissue, that Roycycled tissue paper, and I'm wrapping it around the can. It's perfect size. Now that I have it straight cut, you can leave it like that, but I wanted it to be a little on the ragged edges side. So I went ahead with my wet paintbrush and I got my edges wet. And then you can pull this tissue paper and get some of that paper off of there so it makes it look like a torn edge. This is called the wet method, and wherever your water is, that's where it's going to tear. So if you your water happens to get too far into the paper, be really careful because it's going to tear right in that same spot. So I have all my edges torn, and now I'm fitting it to my can. It's working perfectly, fits great. Now I'm going to use the plastic bag method. So I found a plastic bag. I'm sticking my tissue paper, my Roycycled paper, onto the plastic and getting it wet. The water seems to help stretch that paper a little bit, and this is a wrinkle-free method. Now I'm going to get out my DIY liquid patina. Whoops! I left that in there because, wouldn't you know it, I spilled it on camera. Yep, but here I am. That you do not waste a drop of this stuff if you can help it. So that was not going in the garbage. Thank goodness my table was somewhat clean, and I scraped it all back in that jar, and we're ready to go. So I'm going ahead and putting on my liquid patina. Hopefully I don't have any more messes for this project. And got everything on there. And then you take your tissue and you just lay it onto the can, and it will stretch nicely because it's already wet, and it's just gonna go on more perfect than you ever thought. And so it is a little, you can tear it, obviously, just like that. It's a little fragile, so be careful. And then you're going to just fit that on there and put it into place and let that liquid patina cure up. You're going to push out some bubbles. You can take another piece of plastic wrap and go over the top of it so you prevent your fingers from tearing it. That plastic wrap will let you work with it a little bit more than your fingertips. So this is pretty cool all by itself, but it's going to even get better. So there it is, that Roycycled paper. It is awesome. There are some wrinkles, but they will dry right out. Now this is the weathered wood that we used on other ones. We're going to paint the top and the bottom edges of this can in that weathered wood with a brush that it's seen better days. It's really out of shape, but that was what makes the sporadic edges on the top. So after I did this, I thought, I need some of that rust coming down the can. So I just stippled down to where that seam was. I didn't want anybody to see that seam, and covered up a little bit of that. And I was like, oh, I kind of like that. So I found some other spaces that I wanted to do that on. So here's my stash. Everything is all painted weathered wood. I need crinoline, Old 57, and Summer Crush. I am going to dry brush over top of all of these weathered woods because we need a little whiter surface, a lighter surface. And the weathered wood is going to act as a really good base for underneath. That is why we put it there. So go ahead and dry brush. It brings out all the details in your molds and your texture of your Saltwash paint. And you really like it after this point. But like I said, we're going to get better. So here's some Old 57. We're going to, when you have something that rust, you have a little bit of this turquoisey color that you'll see coming through. So we're just adding a touch of this turquoisey color to the areas where we're going to want to rust the item. This is almost gone, but I just reactivate it with some water. I squirt it right in there and it works perfectly. We're going to do the same thing with the Summer Crush because rust is a little on the orange side. So we're going to just dry brush and stipple in some orange in different areas. It's not too bright of an orange, but it is enough of a contrast that it's going to make a rust look patina. All right, everyone. I forgot to film putting the rust effect on these projects. So I'm going to do, it's going to take me longer to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and put different molds on other projects, and I'm going to show you how I did that. And then I'm also going to rust effect some other things. So in the video that you just watched, you've seen everything up until the rust effect. So I'm going to teach you how I did that with a different project. But these turned out so sweet and so good, so rusty and authentic looking. I absolutely love this project. So it was worth going and making some new projects so I can show you some other things. This one, I have to show you this one with the decoupage paper on it. And this is a tin can, just a soup can. And I put Roycycled fall, I wanted to remember this, so I wrote it down, Fall Botanical Project Board, which is a favorite. I've almost used every single piece of that decoupage paper, and you can get a lot of projects out of that. But I used it here on this can. And as you can tell, I painted over top of it. So I used Old 57 and a little Summer Crush, and I painted right over the decoupage paper and made it look like it had been there for years. So I'll show you how on some different projects, because I don't know why I forgot to turn my camera on. Such is life. But you get to see more projects. All right, so here is another project that I did, and I used the mold. This is olive crust, the olive crust mold. And it's amazing. If you don't have this mold, I encourage you to head on over to my website to pick it up. My website is thepaintedphotographer.com, and I sell DIY paint, IOD products, Roycycled paper, Saltwash, and Jamie Ray Vintage stencil brushes and her papers. And then I also have my own line of rice papers, and those are on there as well. But I showed you how I'm doing everything up to the point where I stopped filming before. So we're gonna watch that now. I don't know where that footage went, but here we are. I'm going over the entire project with the DIY Big Top. I am sealing all of that paint in, so everything is all sealed in tight and nothing's going to be reactivated with water or anything like that. So sealing it all in, and then I let it dry. Now I take the DIY liquid patina and I go ahead and I put it in random spots along with the ground cinnamon to make a rust look. So it's in a separate cup because it's going to get dirty. So sorry for the angle, I put my camera on the wrong side. But here I am, I put just random little bits of the liquid patina and then sprinkled this ground cinnamon over the top. You can move it around with your brush if you want, or your fingers, or tap it off so that it's not quite so thick on there, however, whatever process you want to use. I do, after I get the entire side done, then I do go ahead and I flip it up and I kind of tap on it to let the excess cinnamon fall down. And then I did want to see a little bit more of those details and not quite so much cinnamon, so I brushed it off with my fingers. And you still have a lot of cinnamon left on there for a nice rust look. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit and just go around the entire, this is a metal tote. So I'm gonna go around the entire metal tote, adding the cinnamon and giving it that rust look with some just periodic spots. Wasn't that fun? Okay, disclaimer. I had 3 projects, and I was going to do the cinnamon trick with the 3 projects. But you know me, I always gotta try something different. So this one was with cinnamon, and I have 2 more. One I'm gonna do, instead of the cinnamon, I'm gonna switch out the dark and decrepit dust in place of the cinnamon. And then the next one, back in a couple years ago, Debbie had some lab samples that were an overshipment, and she had these samples that she just shipped out to retailers. And I happened to get a rust dust, which is amazing. And I use that. I've never used it before. I've had it for a couple years and I just haven't ever used it. It's a big can. I should probably think about if I would put it into smaller size jars and send it out to people. What do you think about that? Leave me a note in the comments. I'm gonna show you those two projects and how I did them. Here's the next project that I did. I took Summer Crush and Dark Dust. Well, I told you I hope I wouldn't spill again, but this is a different day and I'm spilling. This is the DIY Dark Dust, and thank goodness I was on a piece of cardboard so I could just brush it right into the container. Does anybody else do this? Just doesn't matter. I'm gonna spill something no matter what I'm doing. So I go ahead and put the Dark Dust into the Summer Crush. I didn't know if that was the right process to do or not, but that's what I was trying. I know the rust is kind of an orangey look, but it also is a brown, so I mixed those two together. So now it's kind of like that Saltwash mixture, and it just has a little bit of orangey rust look to it. So I put it on, I did smear some around with my fingers, and then I also took the Dark Dust and added it onto the top of the wet paint. And it gave it a more chunky look when I did it that way. But I do like the Dark Dust in into the Summer Crush because it does darken up that Summer Crush a little bit. And you could use weathered wood if you wanted to also. So just go ahead and sprinkle that Dark Dust onto the can when the paint is wet, and smear it around with your brush or your fingers. Rust is not, it doesn't matter where you put it. Rust is natural. It's going to go in many different places and it's going to be very sporadic. So go ahead and finish this can up with the Dark and Decrepit Dust. That was the Dark and Decrepit Dust. Look at this, drippy rust, right? Drippy rust, I love it. You can do this technique with the Decrepit Dust. It's chunky, it's perfect. I love it. Okay, here is this. I don't know if it's dust or if it's a making powder. I'm not really sure, but I took some liquid patina and I put it into that separate container, and then I sprinkled this dust on there. And it must be like a making powder because it really smeared and made more of a color than the dark dust. So I smeared that onto the top, and look at that rust look. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. Now, since I went over some of the decoupage paper with the old 57, I thought I would do the same thing with this making powder rust. And so I sprinkled some of it on there and going back in with my brush and going and making it like a big rust spot there. It was a little bit too much, so I had to try and figure out what I was going to do next. So I took a baby wipe and wiped some of it off. I love that look. It really, I don't know, it was a great look to what I was doing. So I went ahead and smeared it around with my finger. Now I got a little bit less rust on there, which helps, and not quite so thick. and just smeared that around, and then took my baby wipe and blotted it so it wasn't quite so smeary. It was more rust look. And then I also blotted the top. So we're gonna go ahead and finish this can with the making powder dust. Okay guys, this one might be my favorite. Let me know what you think. The Roycycled Fall Botanical Project Board is on here. And all I didn't show this part of it, but I just decoupaged it. You can see it on some of the video. I just decoupaged that piece onto the face of this can. Well, I needed to cover up those edges, so I covered it up with rust. Look at here. I covered up the edge of the paper with rust, and down here on this side and down on the bottom. And then I even went over the paper with some rust and some old 57 and grunged that all up. Now this can, look at that. This was my favorite. I'm almost thinking I need to bottle up some of that dust because I certainly am not going to use all that dust. It's a jar. After your projects are all dried, you're going to go in with the DIY Big Top and go right over the top of all of that. This one is the cinnamon, and I'm going right over top of the cinnamon. And it does not pull off because we shook off any extras that was on there, and it's stuck. It's stuck in the liquid patina. So you're just gonna go over top of everything and seal it all in. It no longer smells like cinnamon. So if you think you're gonna have a project that makes your house smell like cinnamon, it no longer smells like cinnamon. We're sealing that all in. So just go ahead, and it kind of has a cloudy look to it, but that will dry clear. The cinnamon does not smear around. I don't know why, and neither does the dark dust. When I went ahead and sealed this one in, the dark dust did not smear around either. We just went right over the top with the Big Top as well. And there was quite a bit of dust on there, and it just did not smear. I'm not sure why, but it didn't. So I hope you try this project. By far, my favorite rust type is this one. And I am going to package this dust up into smaller containers, and I'm going to make it available on my website. So find me at thepaintedphotographer.com and look under making powders, and I'll have a special making powder. Look at it. It's so good. Maybe by the time you watch this video, I'll have figured out if I can put this into maybe a 1 ounce container and sell it that way. It's so good. All right, that's my video. Thanks for watching. If you need any of these products, you can find me at thepaintedphotographer.com, and I'll ship it right to your front door. Also, find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, along with YouTube. If you haven't subscribed and you like this video, please do so. Also, give me a comment of which one was your favorite project. And until next time, happy painting.